Hello, hi, good day everyone. So welcome to the week's lesson on reading skill as I promised. So today I'll be covering three things. The first is that we will look into how to identify problem and solution, particularly in a text. And we're also going to look into various techniques of exploring speculation and trying to interpret visual information, which includes graphics or infographics produced in the text to understand and make sense of the text. All right, so just give me a second while I launch my PowerPoint. Okay, all right, so it's here. So when we look at academic text, it can be in the form of reading text of a material, especially research materials, or if we are looking in the context of our English language, we are looking at text written by authors to convey certain information. So when you're trying to read a text, you need to make sure that you have the analytical mind when you are dealing with the text in terms of looking into the structure of the text. So structure goes back to the concept of how it is written, how many paragraphs and so on, what kind of tone the author used, and what are the evidence or materials presented in the text. So moving on, you need to make sure that you understand in terms of three aspects, which is the structural lens, the linguistic lens, where you are looking at the way how the author actually conveyed the information, and finally the visual lens. That means you use the evidence presented, which is in the form of tables, graphs, or infographics, to actually make sense of the evidence. All right. Okay, moving first, when we look at the structural blueprint over here, we are actually looking at understanding the paragraphing structure. Okay, so which means that when you are able to identify certain pattern that exists in the passage, you can actually anticipate the content even before you actually finish reading, in which you have you evaluate the text. So you identify, what is the situation or problem addressed in the text, and then you're also able to look into, what is the proposed solution in the text. So when you actually identify these patterns, you can actually grasp the text much more easier, which means that you will actually stop trying to translate word by word in your mind, and you start to connect the idea that you read. So this is where the concept of skimming and scanning comes in as well in prior, before you actually read the text. So how do you actually do this, right? When you're trying to identify or trying to read a text which is in relation to problem solution particularly. So this has been explained in your book under Unit 6, if I'm not mistaken. So if you actually look through the reading skill, you will actually find a particular approach in our book that talks about problem and solution. How do you identify what is the problem addressed in the text, and what are the solution that how do we understand what is the solution proposed in the text. So for you to understand a problem, you need to understand the context. So that's where the situation is. For example, if you're talking about, some of the common problems faced by our university students, right? So, and then you go on thinking about the context, like, okay, university students. Maybe you also think about, where is it, in urban, or is it in suburban or rural area? And then, you start trying to connect these ideas for you to understand what the situation is all about. So only then we can actually go to the niche of the problem. So once you understand the context in the text, you can actually go in and trying to locate what is the problem spoken about in the text. So this includes, some keywords like some of the main issue or some of the main problem. You will actually see these kind of indicators which actually encompass the whole idea. And then you will actually be linked to the solution. All right, so once you have actually tackled or identified the problem in your text, all right, sometimes the solution is embedded. All right, it can be one or few solutions, or sometimes the author can actually put in the devil's advocate hat and trying to impose it to the reader to come up with a solution. So again, it goes back to trying to understand the text. And finally, let's say if there is a solution, so as a reader, you're supposed to evaluate, and you're supposed to see whether whatever solution that has been proposed is effective or not. So when you read, you're not just supposed to be doing a passive reading. I've spoken about this. You are supposed to be doing active reading, in which that you are mentally activating whatever information that you know about the particular issue and trying to make sense to what you are reading. Okay, next we are looking at the linguistic tone, or the tone itself when we are dealing with the text, right? So in academic writing, or even in conventional writing, sometimes authors rarely, or in a very minimal way, they actually make a bold statement which is 100% clean. So they usually use hedging to express caution, or sometimes to invite even collaboration. So rather than using statements like it proves, it is confirmed, they may actually come up with words like suggests or probably, to actually talk about there is a possibility of discussion. And rather than putting the idea up for undue criticism, they try to make it in a way that it is not 100% correct, but it is something that they are proposing. So you need to make sure that you understand that, so that you can make the call in between of trying to understand what has been stated, whether it's a fact or it's an opinion. Okay, moving further, how do we actually interpret our visual that we see, right? So you may actually see, like, sometimes they put images, sometimes they put like tables, sometimes they put infographics. So all of this, right, is actually I would say signals for you to read systematically. That means you don't just look at the shapes and the way how the data is presented, but you look at what is actually spoken in the table or in the infographic. What is the main message? You look at the title. The title can actually tell you what is it about, and then you look at the visualization in terms of the numbers, in terms of the shape, or is there any color coordination, and then you try to make sense to the text. Okay, and then of course you have to also find out on the source, which means that anyone can actually put up a table, right? And then you see, like, where's this source from? Is it credible? Is it from a reliable source? So that is something that you need to look at as well. And over here you can see under the scheme of labels and scales. So this is a table. This is an infographic, right? In bar form. All right. So you need to make sure that you understand what are the scales indicating as well. So how or what are the methods, the way visuals can be presented? So they can be presented in the form of tables. So usually tables are used for exact, very important and precise information. So in which the data, right, or the information is usually organized in a logical way for you to understand and for you to compare. Sometimes, text may also use graphs to talk about, degree and the direction of change, and this can also actually be used to show comparison between subjects. And sometimes you may also have like line graph, where it shows the correlation of one issue to another. Okay, and another way is, of course, through charts, which is quite common in text, where they want to talk about the relationship of a whole process, or particularly a part of the process. So but of course the rule is that for a person to come up with a chart, the whole sum must be 100%, right? So when you actually look at this, right, so this is a text in terms of current market saturation, where you're talking about the approaches in terms of how to get a high growth potential. So over here, this is the text. So this is the graph, isn't it? So this is the evidence. So when you actually read this, all right, you're trying to identify what's the problem and what's the solution. And then after that, you realize that there is a hedging in terms of the usage of model word. So that's hedging, right? To talk about what is the link. There is a proposed solution. And then you relate back to what is presented over here. So this is actually complementing each other. So when we look at certain text, the text that you usually see in your Spark book, you would realize that it's actually correlating to one another. So how does it relate, or how does it complement each other? It's based on the way the material is presented. All right. So most importantly is that when you're engaging a text, right, especially the task that you're going to do later, you'll be doing some activity in our book pertaining to reading skill. So when you're going to do this particular task, make sure that you actually put on the hat as an active reader. That means you engage with the text, right, where you stop translating word to word in the text. But of course, if you don't know a particular meaning, you're supposed to look up for it, and then you try to understand the meaning in context. Okay, but you look into the author's level of certainty. How did the data is presented? How is it written? And then look at the visuals and try to engage. That means question the visuals and annotate in between, so that you can actually understand the text in depth. That means you're not just passive reader, but you're an active reader who engages with the text, and at the same time who's able to make sense of the text. So just a last piece of word, it's very important for us to read with a purpose. That means you need to make sure that your minds are clear when you engage a text, and you're able to read a text based on the retrospective level. All right, so with that, I think I have actually addressed 3 key ideas that I want to talk about today. And in terms of the task, I am going to put it up in my Guru for you to access. So once you have completed, just put a note in our group to confirm that you have submitted your work. All right, with that, I thank you.